welcome to the Underdog Podcast. Today we have another behind the business for you guys. So we're going to go back a little bit. I know we were at, I believe the last Behind the Underdogs episode, we were talking about sort of DECA, gym partnerships, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go a little bit back now, almost a year to date, to July of 2023, where we went out to Chicago at a buyer seller conference, essentially to try to get our first chain, which was ultimately Hannaford at the end of the day. That was one of our meetings, but we're going to dive a little bit into that, kind of talk about the logistics along the way, each step of the process up to present day, where we're finally launched into Hannaford in the local program in all 16 locations in Massachusetts, and just sort of the trials and tribulations that we've been going through and the current challenges that we have at the store level in terms of building awareness, moving product, and ultimately, these chains, they want to see volume, they want to see velocity, moving cases, moving cans, and yeah, so we'll dive in on that. But Dylan, if you want to start it off with a little synopsis of how we got started at out in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was at home working on the golf course last summer. You were also home in Massachusetts. We were kind of doing our thing apart. At this point, we didn't. I hadn't officially decided that I was going to go to UNE. So we didn't even know that we were going to be together in the fall. I think it was obviously in the works and was in discussion, but it wasn't kind of set in stone just yet. But yeah, at the time I was at home. You were here. We were both doing our thing, working on UD remotely, and yeah, we started. I believe we signed up for Range Me. What, it was within a month of going to ECRM. So Range Me was a program that we signed up to, like you said, pair us with buyer and sellers. I'm trying to think of some of the very first ones that we started working with. I remember like Maddie's Market was one,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
was basically just like a social media platform to introduce sellers like us to buyers like, I mean, ranging from, little mom and pop stores to big ones like 7-Eleven's on there and Vitamin Shop and CVS, like that sort of thing. And basically start to establish a relationship with them. And obviously, Range Me being owned by ECRM, they put on these events. This was the summer beverage session, I believe it was called in Chicago. And being a part of the Range Me program, we kind of got in for a discounted rate, and we thought it would be a great idea. So it all happened pretty quick because I remember having to give my 2 weeks, like literally the day after we decided. We decided 2 weeks before we had to be there. I remember calling my boss, telling him like, "Hey, like that's it. I'm heading back." He's like, "Well, school starts in 6 weeks." I was like, "Yeah, but we got business to attend to. Like, that's it. I'll see you later," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it was like 2 weeks left of summer, and yeah, like you said, it was just past a year. It was, I want to say, July 26th and 27th of 2023 when we went down there. Got tickets arranged, and yeah, I was flying from Calgary to Chicago, and you were obviously flying from Boston, and we were going to meet in Chicago for the event and go from there. So I'll let you dive into more on the logistics side of things, but yeah, we essentially got the flights arranged, met at the airport, and got squared away. The event was luckily at the hotel, which was convenient, so we didn't have to worry about too much travel and booking Ubers and whatever taxis, that sort of thing. But yeah, take it away.
Yeah, this was an interesting one because this was like our first legitimate opportunity of potentially getting a chain and honestly getting the opportunity to increase our revenue to a point where we're an established company and an emerging brand. So the preparation that went into it in those 2 weeks prior to going out there was pretty substantial. I mean, we did research on, so this one, just to give a little background on the event. So if you're in on the full event, you get about 25 to 30 meetings with different buyers like CVS, Walmart, Hannaford, whoever it might be. We basically had like the get your foot in the door program. So we had
Mhm.
5 meetings. We had one with what was it? Was it Walgreens or CVS? I forget.
Walgreens.
So Walgreens, US Foods, Norman Distribution, Price Smart, and then
Price
obviously,
Smart.
yeah, and then obviously Hannaford as well. And we basically did background on every single company that we were meeting with, and in terms of what they would want to see, what kind of fits into their mission. Each brand obviously has a different mission in terms of the products they want to bring in. Some are more focused on the organic, natural side of things in terms of onboarding product. Like Walgreens was an example where it was like they encourage diversity, equity, and inclusion, like all that kind of stuff. So, those sorts of things, just so we can understand who we were talking to and what they would be looking for. And obviously, more so down to the product level, we would do a lot of background on each brand of what products they currently have. Some were more focused on the natural side of things, which obviously fit our bill perfectly. Hannaford being one of them. We kind of saw that as a low hanging fruit for us prior to going out there. We were like, that could be a huge opportunity for us. And we had this whole pitch. Essentially, you got 10 minutes to meet with these people, and we had this whole pitch memorized. Basically, it was a script that we made, and we were like, all right, we're at this point, like you said, we were separated, so we were working on our own lines, memorizing them and everything, and we basically had it down when we got out there because we didn't know what to expect. But our motto is always prepare more than what you're expecting for, right? And I think you'd be better off that way, and that's the way we took it. We went out there, and it was funny because I remember, he came in. I think we had a meeting that day, I believe, and or it might have been the following morning.
Yeah,
And
'cause I think we had a day. We had a day to kind of get ready. I remember we got there, kind of got checked into the hotel. I remember going down to the lobby and like checking
yeah,
the site out and kind of where the meetings take place and everything. We met with, I'm blanking on his name now, who's kind of organizing at our point of contact, and he kind of
yeah,
took us around and did everything. And then we had the rest of the day. I remember to prepare, and we had the boxes, we had the table, everything like the
yeah,
table runner. We had everything ready to go. And yeah, part of that was the script that, I mean,
yeah.
it was over a minute long and we had the whole thing memorized.
I remember
Um,
one moment of just kind of conflict and like panic was when we went down there to look at the setup and everything. And we were in the section where it was like the full time, like the people that paid for the full program.
yeah.
Some brands that had like 20 cases in there. We were like, how much product are we giving away? We thought we were giving like a can of each. I think we brought like 2 cases in our freaking luggage bag. You know what I mean? These companies had it all shipped in. They had these full setups and everything. We're like, wow, we're really off to a hot start here. But it
Yeah.
ended up being fine because we had our first meeting. Our first meeting was a very interesting one because we didn't know what to expect, and it was with Norman Distribution. Met with one of their buyers, and you could kind of tell, we're in there, we're already sitting in there prepared. He comes in, walks in a couple minutes late, and you could just kind of tell based on the sort of aura in the room and that like
Mhm.
way he was carrying himself that it was going to be a difficult one for us because I think he was already kind of given this preconceived notion of like, oh, we're young kids, like what the hell is this? What a waste of time type of thing. And we gave him a
Yeah. He did
perfect
not want to be there.
yeah, gave him a perfect pitch. Everything was awesome. And he asked us for our business cards. And we were like, oh, yeah, we got these like virtual ones, it gives way more information than a business card can. And he's like, no, 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 I need a actual physical copy. He's like, you don't have those? And we were like, we looked at each other and we were just kind of in panic, like, what the hell? Like, we got to get
We're
business
like, we
cards.
run an online business. Like, why would we
Yeah.
have a physical business card to give this guy?
Uh, Yeah, so that I mean, needless to say, we were prepared. We nailed it. Every corner of it, and the only thing was just the business card thing. We ended up, whatever, moving on. Meeting ends like a couple minutes short. We were like, wow, that did not go as planned. That did not go that well in terms of the response that we got from him. And so we were panicking. We didn't have another meeting for a little while. So we went back to the room, scrambled. We made some business cards on Staples online. There was one down the street, had them printed for pickup. We drive in our, were we in the U-Haul at that point?
Oh, yes, because we had a break in between. We went and picked up the U-Haul from like the sketchiest side of Chicago. Picked up the U-Haul, took it to Staples, picked our business cards up, and then had the rest of the meetings.
Yeah. Yeah. And we go back for the next meeting, just barely make it in time. And they didn't even ask for business cards, and they gave us theirs like at the end. We were like, do you want ours? Like we got them now. We might as well give them out. We're not giving them anyways, but they were like, oh no, like all of our information's online on the platform. You
On
could just
Range Week.
there, yeah. And we were like, no kidding, like
Yeah.
that's what we were anticipating in the first place. But yeah, so then the meetings they start going getting a little bit better, but we're still striking out. I mean, we had the 5 meetings, and I think we went 0 for 3 in the first three. I don't think we were ready for them.
Mhm.
Especially Price Mart was like out of the country. It wasn't even something that we would be able to fit for that.
Yeah.
Um, and so we were like, okay, that was when we had some time in the afternoon to prepare for the Walgreens meeting, and then Hannaford at the end of the day. And we were like, what, Walgreens is a huge one. This could be a huge opportunity if we can really hammer it and kind of spin this in a way where they're getting in on a brand that is up and coming and emerging. And once again, we went in there. There was three of them. Usually, there's just one. We were like, wow, they show up late again. We were sitting in
Mhm.
there waiting, setting up our stuff, giving samples around the table, had everything set up. We're in there sitting. They show up late, and basically, you could tell they weren't even interested at all. Like they weren't even listening. I don't think. And
And
we
we
nailed.
gave probably our best pitch at that point. Like we nailed everything. We portrayed it, for what it is and portrayed it very positively. Couldn't have spoken any better. Like we nailed every aspect of it, the professionalism, everything from, talking about the product itself to just how we carried ourselves. And yeah, I just remember the one guy in the middle. He's just like, "So what retailers are you in?" We're like, well, none. That's why we're here. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, we work with established brands. Like, maybe if you get some accounts, we can talk. But which is what we expected. Like, but at the same time, it was frustrating because that's why we took a chance on something like this was
Mhm.
to get something and obviously continue. And then, yeah, Hannaford's was our last
Yeah.
one there.
And I think honestly, I could probably speak for you on this one too. Is like after that meeting, we were kind of like, shit. Like we felt like we were
A
0 for
little
4,
defeated.
kind of striking
Hmm.
out. We invested in a lot of money to get out there and pay for this event too, and after that meeting, it was kind of like, wow, well, we have this last one, and we kind of spun it. We were at that point, I think we were both kind of thinking like this probably won't work out any of these. And then the more we started looking at Hannaford, we were like, this could be perfect for us in
New
the
England
sense.
based, like it was something local to us. We knew that was going to be our best one, our best opportunity, I should say.
Yeah,
Um, and it just happened so that it was last, but which was kind of fitting in the end.
I know.
Um,
Seriously, I don't think we were. Felt confident going into that last meeting, and I felt more positive. And then as soon as he came in, I could tell he was done with the day. He'd probably had like 30 meetings at that point, or maybe even more than that, honestly. And he came in, you could just tell like he wanted to get out of there, but it ended up
mhm.
taking a turn for the better. Like all of a sudden, we just started talking, giving our pitch, and I think he stopped us like halfway, and he's like, "This is exactly what I came out here for." And we were like, "Huh? Like this is what you came out here
It's like we're
for?"
looking for clean energy,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, and then we just kept going. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, after that, I think it was, we had that meeting and obviously we were in like victory mode. We were like, "Oh my God, we have something to build on here. We have something to work with." Little did we know that there was a lot more that had to get done between that point to where we are today. Um, and I think a lot of that ties into a lot of what we talk about is like, don't expect things to happen overnight, but
Hmm.
be prepared to wake up every day and push the needle a little bit further. Um, because it was always on our mind from that day on of like getting into Hannaford. Like that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make it happen regardless.
Yeah. And I think, I guess to give a little context too for, all the listeners, essentially how the meeting ended was, so we met with, his name was John Grover. He was the category beverage manager for Hannaford's, and yes, he did say that this is exactly what he came looking for. And at this point, we told him we were based out of Massachusetts, and he goes, "Great, I'll set you up with our Massachusetts local program contact." And kind of how we left the meeting off was, on Monday or whatever, the following week, we'll get in touch with this local manager for beverage products in Massachusetts. You'll work through the local program paperwork and do a local launch into Massachusetts. And, obviously we're thinking big picture right away. Okay, we nail the local program and then we'll be in all the Hannafords. Like that was, our first thought. And it was a huge win. But that was kind of how we left it off was, okay, the next step is I'll set you up with our contact to work through the local program. Okay, let's do it type of thing.
Yeah,
And I think we followed up with John like literally the next day,
probably.
so we had our contact. Thanking him for his time, doing all the little things to make sure we left a positive impact or had a positive relationship from the get-go with him.
Yeah. And I think I remember we sat at the restaurant at the hotel right after that. We were wrapped up for the day. It was our last meeting. We were getting ready to head out in the freaking U-Haul, which we'll get to in a minute. But I remember just sitting there and like thinking, like almost like, wow, this is our opportunity to expand. And we've been playing that battle for the whole past year of like, how do we get into these retailers? How do we get into the chains? And we thought we were honestly probably years down the line away from getting an
Mm,
opportunity like that. And I honestly think a lot of it was like we could have easily been like not go to the event because we're like we're not ready for this. Nobody's going to take us on or anything like that. But we just took the chance anyways and took the opportunity and took it for what it was. And we prepared for it. We made sure that we were going to make the most of it when we went out there and we made an impact. All it takes is one, and we got that one right. And we talk about this with basically every meeting, every person that we've talked to, whether it's investors or distributors. We always talk about the chicken before the egg type of thing, and that's basically what we were facing. Is like chains are looking for distributors, distributors are looking for chains, and it was just this constant back and forth, back and forth. And now that we had that Hannaford, and then we were like, wow, there's some serious growth potential here with this opportunity that we're given. And I think that was where we started to see that kind of that green grass on the other side, that first opportunity. But before we get more into the Hannaford stuff, let's let's dive into the plan after that.
yeah, I guess I got two more points before we jump into the trip back.
Yeah.
I guess I remember sitting in the restaurant too as soon as we finished, and it was like a sigh of relief, but also yes, obviously the excitement of it because like that was a huge, probably the biggest win for us, in company history at that point. Um, which was good considering the drive that we had to make home. It probably would have been a lot worse if we went over 5.
Oh my
But
god.
I remember thinking like the two things, and one, yes, being the chicken or the egg, just with the whole retail side of things as a whole and trying to get distributors and retail chains and the authorization to be in those chains. And yeah, it was just like this kind of unknown realm to us where it's like trying to learn a new language almost, where you don't understand it. We go to these distributors, okay, we want you to take on our project products and distribute them, but they're not going to take you on unless you have a chain anchor, so they have somewhere to supply it to right off the bat. And then you go to these stores, you're like, okay, well, if that's what the distributor wants, well, we'll go to the store. And okay, we want our products to be sold here. Well, who's going to distribute it? Well, we don't know. We need a chain authorization for it. And it was like this constant, like, how do we communicate to them? And then all of a sudden, like, that was the breakthrough. All of a sudden, Hannaford's wants it. Like, okay, great. Like, at this point, we didn't talk anything about distribution with John. That was not brought up. It kind of seemed like, and now we know some companies do, if they're only in a couple stores locally, they do it themselves. And I don't think John was too worried about that at that point. And, maybe that's a topic for another episode when we can get into the whole distribution dilemma and kind of like the whole second coming of Hannaford's to essentially win them back. I mean, um, just with the whole uproar that the distributors or the distributor situation caused. So that was one thing where it's like, okay, we kind of finally cracked the code and we had an idea of how to do this and like, okay, this is how we progress. And the other thing I was going to say that kind of realized when we're sitting there too is like, it just goes to show what you can accomplish when you just take a chance. Like you hear that cliche, you need to take a risk, but it's true. That's exactly what that was. That whole meeting. Like I mean, I was working on the golf course at home when we were doing UD. You were here. We were building it. Online was great. All was good, and we were growing. And we took a chance to go to Chicago with this program that we just signed up for, with meetings we had no idea what to expect, and then all of a sudden, our biggest win came out of it. Like it just goes to show, like, wow, like if you just take a chance and put something into it, like look what can come of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of been the moral of the story has been, that's been repeatable, and we've seen that with other things. The whole Elliott situation is another example of that. But those are kind of the two things that I took away when we were sitting there after at the end of the day. And I guess to kind of just zoom out for a second, I think we got there on a Friday night. We had Saturday to kind of get ready, and then all the meetings were on a Sunday, I believe, or maybe it was shifted, but like basically all the meetings were one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was about 7 o'clock, 7:30 when we were all kind of said and done, checked out of the hotel, having food, and then we didn't have a hotel that night. And I guess I'll let you take it from here where I cut you off. But we'd wrapped up, had supper. It was probably about 7:30 in the hotel,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, and yeah, so the journey really began after that. And like you said too, that I didn't even really think of that, but if all of the meetings went poorly, that would have been the longest freaking drive home ever. But we were going to pick up cases that we had at one of our sales reps out in Michigan that was no longer working with us. He had about 300 and something cases, and we're like, you know what? We're about, what was it, like 2 hours, 3 hours away, I believe, from
yeah.
Michigan.
I mean, we went from Chicago to like the outskirts of Grand Rapids,
Yeah.
Michigan.
Yeah. And so we drove over there, loaded up the freaking U-Haul, and we began our trek. It was like an 18-hour drive back to Massachusetts. And that was our only way that we really thought to get back from a cost standpoint, because we were like, that it's just gonna, we might as well just bite the bullet, drive through the night, whatever, come back the next day. And I think we had a lot of conversation on that drive too, just about like what this could kind of turn into now with this new opportunity and kind of the plan ahead from there. Because like you said too, it was uncharted territories for us. We didn't really know what to expect. We had no idea the sort of communications that we would have with Hannaford, what they would be looking for, what they would ask for. And we were right. We didn't know anything, because as soon as we started the communication with the local team when we came back, it was like a lot of the stuff we were like, what the hell are we doing? Like, some of this, most of the terms we were like, what does this even mean? Like, who do we even talk to? All that kind of stuff. And I think that just goes to show you too that and I just had lunch a little bit ago with a friend of mine. We went to high school together, and we were talking about this of just like, you really don't know. There's always an unknown. There's always going to be this sort of uncertainty moving forward that you're going to have to deal with when it comes, right? And I think that is entrepreneurship and growing a business to a T. It's like something could show up tomorrow that could catapult your business to the next level, or it could freaking take you down the tubes, and you got to find a way back. And like, you don't know when that day's going to come, and it's going to come. There's been plenty of days where we've kind of like sat across from each other, just like, what the hell do we do?
What are we gonna do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do? How are we gonna pay this? What are we gonna do with this? All these issues we talked about in previous episodes with the cans, production, freaking marketing, partnerships that don't work out, like all those sorts of things. And I think that ECRM event was a perfect example of that. And we were willing to go there. We were willing to go to the unknown and the uncertainties that would shortly ensue after. And but anyways, yeah. So that drive home, 18 hours. I think I ended up having I believe when you were driving the next morning when it was light out again, I had a meeting with the marketing team in the passenger seat in the freaking U-Haul.
Yes.
And I was just like, man, I love this. Like, and I think those are the stories too that we're gonna look back on someday. And I think that any business owner or entrepreneur looks back on the days when like you're growing, you don't have a ton of money to work with, and you're just kind of like wearing all the hats, like all that kind of stuff. I think those are the best stories that you ultimately have, like at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah. Well, it was so crazy. Yeah, we left, and I want to say it was like closer to 5 hours to Grand Rapids because we got there at like 11:30. Like it was pitch black, and yeah, we we get there. I think you had changed. I didn't even bother changing. And now what was funny too is like I was coming back for the year. Like I was staying with you after that. I had my hockey bag, like my all my luggage, and my hockey bag and sticks. We show up in whatever it was. I think we had the 12-foot box truck and show up, throw the door up on this thing. My hockey gear's in the back, like my suitcase for the year, my school stuff. And like that was that. And we load, yeah, 300 cases in. We're doing the math. We're like, and we had planned it out before too, but we're like, Joe, like we didn't account for the hockey bag and the luggage. Like we're about 600 pounds overweight.
Yeah, yeah.
U-Haul's pinned out, and it's like, well, we're not driving it down the street. We're driving it halfway across the country. And yeah, we loaded it up with whatever. Yeah, it was 300, 350 cases, and then it was like, all right, see you later. And he's like, you guys, you're not staying anywhere? Nope. And we hit the road at, whatever, it was midnight and started driving. Still in my dress clothes. I showed up to your house still in my dress clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we drove back. We got back to your place at about 3:30 the next day.
Yeah.
And
And then
we
unloaded all
almost,
the pieces.
oh my God, I'm already tired of doing that. Even when we went to Jersey and I had to load those cases up, I was like, when am I going to be done doing this? But yeah, we showed up. We almost got in an accident on like the last hour of the trip. I mean, granted, we were loaded down, had the U-Haul, no issues the whole night. Neither one of us were like dozing off. We were great. We probably had about 14 UDs, but we made it until the last mile and that cop pulled off onto the highway. Everyone slammed their brakes on. We're like, I got my foot through the floor trying to stop the U-Haul before we go through the tailgate of the guy in front of us. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit, this trip can't be over soon enough. And yeah, sure enough, we pull into your place and unload all the cases again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like those are the kind of stories too. Like I know I just said it, but I think that anybody that is listening right now that is interested in starting their own thing, those are the moments you gotta savor because those are the stories that you're gonna have to tell, like, as you grow the business and, when we have a freaking massive HQ someday and we're talking to, like, people that are working for us and with us and all that kinda stuff, like, those are the kind of stories that people are like, "That is hilarious," like, "That's where it started," and it's just like, that's a part of bootstrapping a company. It's not like we had $20 million to work with right off the bat, you know? And I think that there's a beauty.
We were stressing over a $600 shipping fee.
Yeah.
That's why we drove the U-Haul.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so you learn a lot of things along the way, but that's a funny story that we had at that one, and that's just a testament we talk about all the time. But like all of our business trips have been basically at least one chaotic event that occurred at each one.
Always.
And that was one of them.
Our
So
schedules are always insanely tight, no matter what trip we've done. Usually when it involves flights, because we're obviously on a budget and trying to be cost effective and cost efficient.
yeah,
So our travel is usually absolutely chaotic within a very small time frame,
yeah.
without fail.
Yep. But anyway, so yep, we get back to Mass, and I think now we'll dive a little bit more into this Hannaford process, which I don't think we anticipated being that extensive and involved and take that long. And we've already talked about it briefly a little bit here and there, but obviously we started working with the local team. We reach out, and the paperwork began. We had mounds of paperwork to fill out and our whole concept behind it, and I think this is just something that is so important, especially for a smaller brand, because nobody's really in a rush to get back to you. Fill out all the things that you need to, get them done instantly, as fast as you possibly can, and put the ball back in their court, right? Because
Mhm.
and that was something we learned fairly quickly, that it takes a long time for big companies like that to get back to you because they have other priorities, and obviously we're not a priority at that point in time. And boom, they send back the next stage of paperwork or whatever needs to be taken care of. You send it right back immediately, and that process went through the fall into December, and I believe this is the part that we touched on before, but then we finally got to that distribution question mark where we had to figure out, they asked who our distributor was, and obviously they didn't work with the distributor that we had at the time, and so we went in scramble mode trying to find distributors. That was obviously on Christmas Eve. I think that was actually the last episode that we talked about that. But Christmas Eve, we got the bad news that we had to hold off on the Hannaford launch. We wouldn't launch that spring, and then we just started the outreach. And I think you told the story right about National, or did you not tell that story?
I don't think on the podcast. We can, I mean, we're at 29 minutes. Yeah, we can dive into that. I guess I'll say too, like my initial um, thoughts or kind of expectations were okay, we were going to get through this paperwork. And yes, like you said, I remember you specifically saying, like, as soon as our local contact answers, we're answering, like, it's drop everything, fill that paperwork out, send it back to her, like, get it
Yeah,
to her as soon as we can to keep this ball rolling. Because we knew that this was going to be a tedious process and take some time, and we wanted to make it as quick as possible. Like, if we can prevent any delay on our side, like, we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen. And my initial, I guess, expectation was once they accept our product, they set us up with a distributor. That's how I originally interpreted this. Was okay, Hannaford's wants our product. Well, they're going to tell us that, we work with,
Yeah.
XYZ distributors, and we'll get you guys in touch, and they'll take your products on and they'll distribute it for us. And, that's how I assume this thing works. Going back to rule number one, don't assume anything. Um, but we didn't know what to expect. And yeah, we get to now, I guess, to tie this in nicely, in the fall when we were both at UNE, we end up getting into the school. They introduce us to Brickyard brands. Brickyard takes us on as, a customer. They were our distributor for UNE and Bowdoin, several other schools and other convenience stores in Maine. And it kind of worked out nicely. We're like, okay, Brickyard's looking to grow too. They can take over the Hannaford's accounts for us. Like, this will be great. We'll finish this paperwork up. We've now been working with Brickyard a few months. They'll be able to be our distributor for this Hannaford launch in the spring. Like, it was kind of all coming together and looking real good. And then, yeah, like you say, it was Christmas Eve. I remember ringing the bells and with my dad and Canadian Tire, and we get the email from Melanie. And this was after we had already met with her. We took that right before we went home for Christmas, I believe. I want to say it was like maybe the start of December. It was kind of our final check.
We were like
We'd
green
finished all
light.
the paperwork. Exactly. We were preparing for this big meeting. I remember talking to Danny about it, and kind of just getting all our ducks in a row. We had the presentation ready for Melanie when we got the chance to meet with her, and we went over all the numbers and more of the specifics of it. And we got the managerial approval from the stores, like this is a product that they're all interested in, and that was it. Like we'd made it. We passed all the tests. And then we had this meeting with Melanie. She gave us the green light, and she said she'll just be following up with John Grover, who we met with in Chicago, and ultimately the decision maker. And all was good. And then yeah, we get that email a couple weeks later on the 24th. We're kind of like waiting to hear from John just to get the go ahead and kind of like the next step. And yeah, we get that bomb dropped on us on the 24th about, you know, Brickyard isn't going to work. We're going to hold off on this. And it was just like,
And it wasn't just hold off. It
crushing
was
our
like,
dreams.
yeah, it wasn't even just hold off. It was like, maybe we can revisit this in 2025 or 2026. We were like, huh? Like that
And
long?
at this point, it was 2023. Like
Yeah.
just to put that in perspective, like, yeah, that was a real blow. And we're like, wow, like all this work has just completely been erased. And I mean, we did what anyone would do, or what anyone you would hope anyone would do. And it was like, okay, like how are we going to find a solution for this? Like what can we do? And I remember talking to Danny, like, okay, if the distributors, like, and we didn't even get a real answer right away that it was distributors. It was like, did they
Yeah.
lose interest? Is that not it? Like, what's going on? And because they weren't really clear on why this wasn't moving forward
Yeah.
anymore. And it was when John followed up with us randomly. We were back at school at this time in the spring semester. It's probably early January. And we get that email from him. And he's like, hey, wondering if there's any update on your distributors. We're like, what? Like, I remember being totally like excited but confused at the same time. We're like, we thought this was a done deal. You wanted to revisit it like in a year. Like, what's going on? Where we answered, like, yeah, we're working on it. I mean, at that time, that was the first we knew of it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, what can we do here? And that was when we really went into, I don't want to say panic mode, but yeah, panic mode. We're like, okay, we need an answer for John ASAP about who is going to distribute these products in Hannaford's for us. And it was on from there. And I guess to fast forward, here we are in, August, and we made it all happen. But at that point, we started reaching out to any sort of distributor contact that we could find in Massachusetts that would cover it. And yeah, I guess I'll tell the school project story. I was in that marketing class with Pelly, and we had to interview, I forget what the exact criteria was. We had to interview a wholesaler, like someone who deals with distribution to a retailer. And I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. And I remember using this project as an excuse to kind of get in the door with national distributors, a major distributor in Portland, Maine. And I remember I went there and spoke with their human resources lady one morning. Great, great person. And told her, hey, I'm a student at University of New England. This is kind of what I'm looking to do for this school project. I was hoping to be able to work with you guys for this. And she was nice enough to say like, oh, we've had other students do this in the past. So she was familiar with it and not like caught off guard by any means. And she goes, why don't we set a Microsoft Teams meet, next Wednesday? And I'm like, okay, sounds great. And she goes, if there's any questions I can't answer, I'll pass them along to Jason. I was like, great. And then at the end, when I was about to head out, I was like, oh, by the way, like I wanted to bring these by, told her all about Underdog, kind of gave the little pitch, told her our background and why I was really there. And she goes, oh, like, this is really cool. And Jason happened to be in, and Jason Seavey is the non-alcoholic manager for National. And he happened to take them, and I got a chance to meet him. And then it was just like, okay, here's the deal. We're looking for a distributor to get into Hannaford's. Are you able to help us? Like, this is where we're at. And gave him like the whole lowdown in about 15 seconds. And he was kind of like caught off guard because he was told that there was a student for a student project here. And he's like, I'll see what I can do. And then I end up having the meeting with Jen, and I asked questions that I knew Jason would need to answer. So Jason then came on the call, and yeah, we spoke again. I was like, look, like we are really looking for a distributor. Answered the questions I needed for the project, and then it was back to like, okay, we needed a distributor. Can you guys handle this in mass? Like, what's your reach like? And that was how he gave us the contact for Eric at Atlantic Beverage. We get in touch, or you get in touch with Eric at that point, and I guess to kind of fast track this, Eric gives us, we kind of get the lowdown on how distribution looks in Massachusetts as far as, okay, Atlantic covers a region, and then Atlas Distribution covers the other region of Massachusetts for beverage products at least. And we kind of learn the scope. Okay, Atlantic has 6 of the Hannafords and distributes beverages to them. Atlas has the other 10 for the total of 16 locations in Massachusetts. And Eric kind of gives us the rundown that, here's Ed's contact, who is the non-alcoholic sales rep at Atlas. If you can get him on board, I'll take you guys on and we'll make this happen. Like, okay, like we don't have a choice. This has to work out. And, Ed turned out to be an awesome guy, a big believer and a big supporter of us and everything we're trying to do. Um, he's been awesome with us so far. And yeah, he agreed to take it on. Everything worked out. We go back to John and tell him that, okay, we have distribution, we have Atlas and Atlantic, they're going to cover it. And it was like, okay. And, everything was kind of all of a sudden it was back on track from, literally doom and gloom from Christmas time on. In a matter of what, Joe, would you say like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, a little longer than that, maybe? We had taken on 2 of the biggest distributors in Massachusetts and got them to agree. And I think both of them were really impressed that we had the Hannaford's authorization. Like that's what our ticket was. Because if we were to knock on their door cold, it would have been no, see you later type of thing. But with the authorization, for the local program, it was a big deal in their eyes, and that's ultimately what led them to taking us on and allowing us to go back to John and be like, okay, look, we have distribution. How can we make this work? And we kind of, like you said, just kept pushing the needle. How can we make this work? What else do you need? What can we do? And just kept the ball rolling and slowly gain momentum. And I'll let you jump in, but fast forward, here we are, August 14th, time of this recording. We're approaching 1 month into our launch.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the Hannaford launch for us and locking that down was a big step for us, not just on the revenue and retail side, but also gaining interest from investors and distributors. And those conversations, all of a sudden, they start to get pushed further along in the process. And all that was just from taking a chance, And I think that
Hmm.
there's a lot to be said about that. I mean, we could talk about multiple episodes that are hours long about just taking a chance, taking a risk, and not being afraid of those situations because you can't play it safe when you're building a business. That's the risk in it. Investments are going to work out. Investments aren't going to work out. Decisions you make are going to work out. And they're also not going to work out. Those are things, yes, to consider and make a calculated decision. But at the end of the day, like if you're not taking those risks, you're never going to get the opportunity like we have now. The Hannaford situation has been a primary focal point in just about every pitch that we've had in the past couple of months. And the people that we
Hmm.
talk to, whether it be an investor, a store, a distributor, they're like, "Oh wow, you're in Hannaford. Well, that's impressive. Like, yeah, let's talk. Let's see where we're at and see how we can work together." And I think that's just something that is very valuable, and it always also goes back to just like all it takes is one, right? To roll with it and start creating that domino effect of future opportunities. So um, that's good for this episode. I think there's a lot more to dive into that we'll get into on another behind the business episode. But yeah, I think moral of the story is take action. Don't leave any stone unturned, because you never know what's laying under there and the opportunity that could arise from it. So we appreciate you guys for listening. Make sure to follow us, subscribe on YouTube if you want to watch the video version, and follow us on Instagram, our primary social media platform at underdog_brand. And we'd really appreciate it if you guys left a review. I mean, we don't do any advertising on this podcast or anything like that. All that we want to do is add value to you guys, whether it's a aspiring entrepreneur, an athlete that wants some background on people that they aspire to be someday. We're just doing our best to add value. So with that being said, any feedback is also huge for us, whether it be a review or a DM or an email. Don't be afraid, feel free. We're open to having conversations. So we thank you guys for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.